This is the story of how America's Magic City lost its magic. Birmingham, Alabama once rivaled Pittsburgh and Chicago as an industrial powerhouse, a city built on fire and iron and the raw bones of the earth itself. Today, it has lost 41% of its population, shed nearly 100,000 private sector jobs, and watched as Huntsville quietly overtook it to become Alabama's largest city. The question isn't just why Birmingham declined. Lots of steel towns declined. The question is why Birmingham never came back. To understand what went wrong, you have to understand what made Birmingham special in the first place. The city sits in the Jones Valley, one of the rarest geological formations on the planet. Coal, limestone, and iron ore, the three ingredients needed to make steel, all exist within a few miles of each other. That combination gave Birmingham the lowest raw material assembly costs in the entire United States. When the city was founded in 1871, at the intersection of two major rail lines, it was practically destined to become an industrial giant. And it did. Between 1881 and 1920, Birmingham grew so fast, people called it the Magic City. Blast furnaces lit up the valley floor. The Sloss Furnace Company, Alice Furnace, Woodward Iron Company, Tennessee Coal and Iron, they all carved empires out of that red Alabama dirt. A statue of Vulcan, the Roman god of fire and metalworking, was cast from local iron in 1904 and set on a hilltop overlooking the city. It still stands there today, watching over a very different Birmingham than the one it was built to celebrate. But there was darkness beneath all that fire. Birmingham's industrial boom was fueled in part by one of the most brutal labor systems in America after the Civil War, convict leasing. Young black men, most with no mining experience, were arrested on minor charges and forced into the mines. They died at rates approaching 30% each year. Those mortality figures dwarfed national averages for coal mining. Alabama's industrial leaders held so much political power that the state became the last in the nation to outlaw the practice. This wasn't some footnote in Birmingham's history. It was foundational. The wealth of the Magic City was built on exploitation, and the consequences of that would echo for more than a century. By 1907, U.S. Steel had moved in, acquiring Tennessee Coal and Iron. Here, the story takes a critical turn that most people miss. The steel barons who controlled Birmingham, many of them based in northern cities, had no interest in diversifying the local economy. They did not want competition for labor, and they did not want new industries driving up wages. Even worse, U.S. Steel implemented what became known as the Pittsburgh Plus pricing system, also called basing point pricing, which forced Birmingham steel to be sold at Pittsburgh prices plus shipping costs from Pittsburgh, even when the steel never left Alabama. This pricing scheme neutralized Birmingham's natural cost advantages. Because the steel barons were mostly unconcerned about attracting outside investment, they had no reason to care about Birmingham's reputation. This single-minded focus on extraction would prove catastrophic. The first real cracks appeared after World War II. During the war, Birmingham's furnaces ran hot, feeding the military machine. But when peace came, so did foreign competition. Here's the brutal irony. German and Japanese blast furnaces, rebuilt with American foreign aid, began exporting iron to the United States at prices Birmingham could not match. In 1956, United States Pipe and Foundry tried to fight back, building a massive, ultra-modern blast furnace in North Birmingham. By the time it was operational in 1958, it was already obsolete. The facility that was supposed to save the industry shut down in 1980, barely 2 decades after it opened. The 1960s brought a different kind of crisis. In 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. called Birmingham probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. That spring, King and local leader Fred Shuttlesworth launched Project C, Project Confrontation, bringing thousands of protesters into the streets during the Birmingham campaign, where Commissioner Bull Connor met them with fire hoses and police dogs. The images shocked the nation and helped push the Civil Rights Act through Congress. But the cost to Birmingham was staggering. Downtown retailers lost the equivalent of $6 million a week during the protests. Then, on September 15th, the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed, killing 4 young girls. Birmingham's name became synonymous with racial violence, and the white population began to leave. What urban sociologists call white flight transformed the city's demographics. In 1970, non-Hispanic whites made up 57.4% of Birmingham's population. By 2010, that number had plummeted to 21.1%. They didn't leave the region. They left the city, pouring into suburbs like Hoover, Vestavia Hills, Alabaster, and Gardendale, none of which even existed as incorporated municipalities before 1950. They took their tax dollars, their purchasing power, and their political influence with them. Meanwhile, the state government was not helping. Alabama's 1901 Constitution, a document explicitly designed to preserve segregation, reserved most governing power for the state legislature. Rural counties held disproportionate influence and consistently failed to invest in Birmingham's infrastructure. The city could not adapt because it was not allowed to. And then came a policy that economic historians now point to as uniquely destructive. A government-imposed restriction on office development, sometimes called the Brown Ban, prevented smaller companies and new industries from taking root. It strangled the diversity and variety that healthy economies need to survive. One analysis concluded that it left Birmingham almost uniquely exposed to the economic storms of the 1980s, transforming a once wealthy city into one notorious for underperformance. Highway construction became another weapon. Birmingham's local government used the interstate system to reinforce racial boundaries established by a 1926 racial zoning law, routing highways through majority black neighborhoods and reducing those communities to their poorest residents. By the time the 1980s arrived, everything collapsed at once. Woodward Iron Company, once one of the city's largest employers, went out of business entirely. U.S. Steel slashed its workforce from over 40,000 in the Birmingham area to a fraction of that. Between 1981 and 2013, the city lost roughly 93,000 private sector jobs and 300,000 manufacturing positions. The population, which had peaked at nearly 341,000 in 1960, entered a freefall it still has not fully recovered from. Today, it sits around 196,000. Then came the final humiliation. Jefferson County's sewer system, dubbed the Taj Mahal of sewage, became the epicenter of a corruption scandal involving elected officials, contractors, and bankers. Risky interest rate swaps made between 2002 and 2003 blew up during the 2008 financial crisis. Sewage and water rates increased more than 300% in 15 years, crushing the city's poorest residents. On November 9th, 2011, Jefferson County filed for bankruptcy. At $4.2 billion, it was the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history at that time. One county commissioner later said he was embarrassed and ashamed of what Jefferson County had become. So where does that leave Birmingham today? The picture is complicated. The poverty rate stands at nearly 25%, and over 41% of children live below the poverty line. The median household income is $46,000, well below Huntsville's $55,000. Job growth consistently lags the national average, but there are signs of life. The University of Alabama at Birmingham has become the city's anchor institution in what urban planners call an EDS and meds economy, one built around educational institutions and medical centers. UAB generates $12.1 billion in annual economic impact and directly employs nearly 28,000 people. It is the largest single employer in the state. Downtown Birmingham saw 443 new residential units delivered in the first half of 2025, and multifamily occupancy rose to 86.4%. Homicides dropped over 50% in the first 6 months of this year. Birmingham City Schools gained enrollment for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Even steel is making a cautious comeback. U.S. Steel invested $412 million in a new electric arc furnace at Fairfield in 2020, and in November 2025 announced another $75 million investment in premium steel pipe production. Jefferson County recorded over $400 million in economic development projects in 2025, with manufacturing wages now averaging over $71,000 annually. Birmingham's story is not a simple tale of a steel town that lost its steel. It is the story of a city that was deliberately kept dependent on a single industry, deliberately segregated by law and infrastructure, deliberately starved of the diversity it needed to adapt. Every force that could have helped Birmingham rebuild, local governance, state investment, economic diversification, was systematically blocked or corrupted for decades. The Vulcan statue still stands on Red Mountain, looking out over the valley. The furnaces it once celebrated are mostly museums now, but underneath the rust and the scars, something is stirring. Whether it is enough to bring the magic back remains the open question of Birmingham's next chapter.